And thank you everybody for attending another session of our coaching calls. If this is your first time here, we are walking through Matt's Montessori marketing process. And today is actually a continuation. So if you didn't see part one, that recording is available for you in the members area. But this is the Ideal Montessori website part two. And today we're going to be discussing lead magnets. And Matt, if you wouldn't mind, can you explain lead magnets as far as how you use them in the Montessori context, just to introduce the
Sure,
topic?
absolutely. A lead magnet is nothing but a piece of information that we are exchanging for somebody's email address. And we can get into the purpose of collecting email addresses later and why they're useful and what we actually do with them. But the actual lead magnet itself is just a basic piece of information. That could be a PDF, that could be a gated video on your website, that could be a webinar, that could be a variety of things. But just think of it as information. And some of the best lead magnets that work for us, you need to think about it in terms of what questions are parents asking? What do they want to know when they're visiting your landing page or your website? And those types of lead magnets work really well for us.
From a marketing perspective, the reason we use lead magnets, 98% of your traffic, meaning 98% of the people that are on your website, are not going to engage in any of your conversion points, period. And a conversion point is them calling you, emailing you, filling out the contact form. Um, they're not ready to have a sales driven discussion. And I know I'm not supposed to use the S word, but um, they don't want to talk to anybody. They're doing due diligence and they're doing research. And so what lead magnets do is they help you capture some of that 98%, the lurkers, so to speak. Um, and Matt, I've had some significant pushback from some of our members, our Needle marketing members, on using lead magnets. They say we don't want to be spammy. They're kind of worried about the concept of gating content itself is a little, I don't know how to phrase it, not combative, but maybe cagey. Can you speak to some of those objections?
Sure. I think the first thing that I would say is that most Montessori schools have something on their website that says sign up for our newsletter. I've seen that a lot. That's a lead magnet. So a lot of schools are already using this, maybe not in the way in which we are proposing that they do, but that's a good example of a lead magnet. You're getting their email address and you're going to say, I'm going to send you some information, maybe once a month, maybe once every couple months, kind of our email newsletter about what's going on at our school. It's the same exact thing. So if we can start to think about, yeah, that's a compelling offer, right? Somebody who's maybe interested in our school in general would maybe want to get our email newsletter. But what's a little bit more compelling? Well, getting your tuition rates. That's pretty compelling. People want to know how much this is going to be. Getting some very specific information about the program, like a gated video or a pre-recorded webinar. That stuff, when they're on the site and they are really just kind of getting general information and they're intrigued, that's something that usually people are willing to exchange their email address for to view or to receive the information. And I will say that, in terms of the pushback, it's really common for Montessori schools to feel this way. I've also talked to a lot of different people, and we, it seems like Qasim said, a little bit salesy. And I think that the paradigm shift that I'd like to propose is that, if we think about that, we're actually helping people, we're giving them the information that they want. And why would we want to give them this information and then never be able to talk to them again in the future? That's actually the beauty of lead magnets, is that as you build your list, you can continue to send them messages over time for free. So um, it's important to do if you're looking to grow admissions. And the other thing that I'll say is that if you look at any of the larger schools in your area, whether that is the big box preschools that have a corporate office, kinder cares, that type of thing, they are doing this exact thing. And so if you're not going to do it, people that you're competing against, whether that's those types of preschools, whether that's large private schools. I mean, I've seen a lot of other private schools do this as well. they are using this tactic, and it's effective for them. So if you're not going to do it, somebody else will. And what's going to happen is, they're going to have the prospective parent's email address, and they're going to follow up with them a lot. We should be able to do the same thing. And that doesn't mean we're going to spam people. It means we're going to send people emails over time that are really indicative of what it is we offer. And it's a way of educating them about Montessori, actually, in an email series.
Very well said, Matt. I wanted to read a comment that Susanna posted in the chat pane. She said, gated information related to Montessori was hard for us. Because our school's goal is to spread the ideas of Dr. Montessori to as many families as possible, we didn't want to hide it in any way. When we changed it to gated tuition rates rather than why Montessori works or facts about Montessori, we felt much better about not having it just out there on the site.
Sure, I can answer that question. So we're not going to gate all the information on our site. I think that actually you should totally have your FAQ about Montessori or why Montessori works available for anybody to read. The key thing here is that you're going to give them something that's a little bit of a bonus. So you're going to give them again, like a pre-recorded video, for instance, where you actually have your one of your teachers maybe talking more in detail about the information that you put out in the FAQ, or maybe you have a video about why Montessori works, right? So they've read the bullet points that you're giving on your website, but then you can say, watch it in action here, provide your email address, and then they can actually watch it and see it. So they're intrigued by what you've written. And this is just an extension of that. So definitely, please do put that information. We absolutely have to give people general basic information about Montessori, but the specific type of stuff, the stuff that they have more detailed questions, they kind of want to see it in action. That's stuff that works really well as a lead magnet.
One of the things I'd like to offer is when we ask for their email address, I don't want to look at it as a trade. Like, if you give me your email address, I will give you this piece of content. Instead, the way I like to look at it is, hey, if you're interested in this content, give me your email so I can send it to you. And so it's just facilitating the fact that we're going to give them content that we want them to hang on to. And it's a better place to land in their inbox than just give it to them in their browser where they could possibly navigate away.
Absolutely, because then they can also read it when they're free. A lot of parents, I looked at our analytics, and I see a lot of parents doing research late at night. After 10 p.m., we have a pretty big spike in terms of traffic. And is that the best time we want them to be? If it's 1 a.m, do we want them to be reading about Montessori when they're tired and exhausted right before they go to bed? No, I would probably want them to be able to read it in their email inbox when they have the time and opportunity to do so, and they can go back and read it again, right? They can refer to it, they can forward it on to somebody else. So it's just a much more effective way of doing it. And Qasim, I do like that that thing you just said in terms of, we're actually facilitating this process. We're giving them the information in the best way for them to be able to really absorb it.
Absolutely. I don't want to derail the conversation at all, but Suzanne, I want to thank you for your comment. And I want to remind everybody that if you have any questions or comments throughout these coaching calls, please don't hesitate at all. There's a chat pane on the right-hand side of Easy Webinar. You can comment on the Facebook Live video. And I think it really contributes to the discussion to have everybody's participation. I wanted to speak to the importance of list building. Email marketing continues to be the highest performing digital marketing tool in existence, which is funny because when you hear digital marketers talk, everybody likes to say the words email marketing is dead. And I think they do that because they want to be, cutting and sort of cool and inciting. But what's interesting about it is it's the lowest cost and it's the highest return. And so it's incumbent upon us to build a list. If somebody's not going to enroll in your school or schedule a tour, the very next thing, the next most important thing is for them to subscribe to your list in some way, which is what makes lead magnets so important. And Matt, I think you've done a really good job. I'd say a truly stellar job at list building. It's one of the things, even before we were engaged, you were just already excellent at.
Yeah, and for me, it just makes a lot of sense for a couple of reasons. Number one, the cost and ease of doing it. So, we look at, there's a cost to even meeting with people on the phone or meeting with them in person. The cost is our time. We're limited in the number of people we can talk to. We're limited in our effectiveness. It is if I had unlimited time, I would love to talk to everybody for an hour about Montessori, right? We would have zero problems at all. That is not a reality, just in terms of people's schedules, in terms of our time, in terms of all those things. So email is a great solution in the sense that you can send that out to them over time. You don't have to give them everything at once. You can pick individual points and send them a series that builds on itself, which I found very effective as well. So for me, it just makes a lot of time, and it makes a lot of sense in terms of our time and attention. It really does work. And again, email is free to send out for the most part. And if there is a cost, it's going to be very, very low versus any other type of messaging.
And, I have a bullet point here that says thought leadership. Really, all I meant by that was it gives you the opportunity not just to establish yourself as a thought leader, but to serve these parents. So one of the paradigms I'd love for everybody to assume, Montessorians are they serve people. They're there to help. That's, I think, the point of the Montessori model. And I know I'm not articulating this well as you could, Matt, but having somebody on your list gives you the opportunity to serve them regardless of whether or not they end up enrolling, which I think is an additional value proposition. It expands your reach beyond your walls. Um, and stop me if I'm misstating or overstating anything.
No, you're not. It actually helps people make a decision as well, right? Because again, Montessori is right for almost every child. It is not right for every family. And by you giving this information, it helps them make that decision. I don't want to enroll a family if they're not going to be mission appropriate for our school, if they don't necessarily believe the same things that we do about child development. So it's important from that sense as well, that you're actually helping them make a decision and prevent any type of we all know how difficult it is when we have families that start and you quickly realize that, oh gosh, they're not living their home life in a way that's going to sync up well with what we do at school. And by sending out an email series in advance, by giving out as much information as you can through that email series, you can help them make that right decision. So you don't have to kind of guess at that. You're giving them the information that they need to make the decision that's best for their family. And also in terms of thought leadership, one of the great things about writing email series is that you actually have a time to sit down and put your best foot forward. I know that we've all been in those situations where we're talking to people about Montessori, and it's hard to make all of our points. The conversation can go in a different direction. People may have questions that don't necessarily apply to Montessori. We can actually, in an email series, make sure that we're putting out all of the information that we want to distribute to them, and that could be 15 emails, right, about all the different points about the benefits of Montessori at a specific level, and you can make sure that all that's been delivered. And you can't do that with other mediums. So that's why I think it's really been effective for us.
Well, and I think that's a perfect segue, Matt, because that speaks to the next point, which is setting the gold standard. You get to tell parents why Montessori is a more effective um, approach. You get to place them in a position where you're arming them with the information. Have you thought about this? Do you know that? Here's a collection of things that you need to know, and it puts you in a position to define the standard when they start to compare you to other alternatives, which they're going to do.
Sure. It's also a really great exercise just to do as a school leader and as a Montessorian, to really sit down and think about what are the benefits from Montessori education and from our specific school and community that we can communicate. It makes you better at what you do. It makes it much more clear in your mind about um, the reasons why that people should enroll, the reasons why people should re-enroll, the reasons why people should stay all the way through elementary. Again, every school is going to have um, its own model for that, but it's a great thought exercise. I actually, it is a lot of work, I will tell you that, but it's one of those things that it's you take the time and you do it once, and then it's this evergreen thing that continues to serve you over time. And you just know that everybody's getting exactly the right information that you want to give to them, and you don't have to leave it up to chance.
So let's talk about some of the elements of a good lead magnet. The very first one speaks to one of our initial coaching calls discussion, which is the Montessori admissions funnel. And if you haven't taken that call, I'd strongly recommend it. It's more conceptual, so to speak. but it's important to understand the phases of the admission funnel. And this is a good example. An effective lead magnet is going to help transition someone further down the funnel. And Matt, can you help explain what it is I mean by that?
Absolutely. So the funnel that we've talked about in our previous call is very wide at the beginning. I mean, we have as many people as we can who may be interested in our school. They don't know anything about Montessori yet. They may not even have children yet. They're just interested in general. And by sending them, by having them sign up for a lead magnet and then consuming that information, they can then make the decision to move to the next stages of the funnel. It's a good way of again, helping people self-select out. That's a really important concept to think about. That before we spend our time with them, and again, there's always a cost for that, whether you're doing tours or whether you're talking on the phone. Um, Before we do that, I'd like people to be able to self-select whether this is good or bad for them. And so it does push them to the next stage of the funnel, and you don't have to do any work in order to do that because you've given them the information.
The next bullet point is one, it's a rule that I think can be broken if you have a hyper effective lead magnet, but we want content that typically can be consumed in 5 minutes. And mostly because you don't want to overwhelm people. You don't want them to, ebooks are tough for that reason because now it's work instead of value. Um, and Matt, I think you mentioned that you had some trouble with ebooks as
I did, absolutely. And I learned a lot from that. That was the very first lead magnet that I ever used. And we wrote an ebook called Is Montessori Right for Your Child? And I think there were something like 7 or 8 different articles in there into one packaged ebook. And as I was looking at the effectiveness of it, I was starting to realize that think about this from a parent's perspective. They're looking at all different types of schools. They have recommendations from friends and family. They're engaging with basically different schools to make a decision. And so they sign up for this, and I send them a 45-page ebook, and it was beautiful. It was well written. It had great images, but in that same way, there's no when people are so strapped in terms of their time, in terms of their attention, they're not going to sit down and read a 45-page ebook. So it was much better for us. What I did is actually took the content from the ebook and broke that up into my email series that was then we were able to send out to people over time. And that's been much more effective because we made it bite-sized instead of this gigantic meal.
And another point that we'd like to make about effective ebooks is, excuse me, effective lead magnets is having a very clear statement of value. It's easy, especially because you might not know how little a potential parent knows about what it is that we're offering. It's really easy to get vague with the offer. Download this lead magnet. Um, and not necessarily explaining exactly why they would want it or what the value is. So getting clear on explaining specifically what you're offering, and why it's going to serve your prospect. And I think the best example of that is Matt, is your tuition rates. Very clear statement of value, and they know exactly what it is they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, and it's something, and I would add to that, it's something that they want, right? Lead magnets work great for us when we think about what are the first questions that people are usually asking, and so tuition requests obviously are huge because people want to know whether or not they can afford it or not, if you have a financial aid program or not, all those types of things. So that the value is obvious for something like that. For something that's different, like a video or another piece of gated content, I like to use bullet points to be able to say very clearly and succinctly what it is you're getting, what you will learn from this. So this is not something that you're putting in, 5-paragraph form in terms of what their value is. It should be very succinct. And by reading this, you will learn X, Y, and Z. Sometimes I've seen some other websites do this as well, which I like, and I may consider doing it for us. Is you put an estimated read time on there as well. Estimated read time 5 minutes,
Mm.
because then people know this is what I'm expecting, and yes, this is something that I want.
I love the estimated read time, and I also think your bullet point comment speaks to the be specific bullet point that we have here. We really want to tell them exactly what they're going to get and manage those expectations. This is, one of the first interactions they're going to have with you, and you want to deliver, and you're building a relationship in a way is how I like to look at digital marketing in general. And if we promise something and then don't deliver on that, that's a small notch against us potentially in the future.
Absolutely. And to Qasim's point about being specific, don't think about a lead magnet as, again, I made this mistake. My first lead magnet was, is Montessori right for your child? It's too broad. That's a very, very broad concept, and the amount of information that's going to be needed to transmit is just way too much, as opposed to, here's what a typical, I just came up with another brilliant idea for a lead magnet on this call right now. Here's what a typical Montessori morning looks like, right? This is another question that a lot of parents will have. Like, so what's a schedule of the day? What does that look like? So we don't have a normal schedule that a lot of other preschools have, where it's like, at 8:30 we're going to have circle, and then at 9:15 we're going to have science time. We obviously don't do anything like that. We have a 3-hour work period in the morning. But what a great lead magnet to be able to show a video of what a typical Montessori morning looks like, or go into more detail about kind of the schedule of the day and why we have a 3-hour work period. That's something that parents want to know, and that's something that is very specific that we're giving them in exchange for their email.
Matt, I love that. We're going to create that and hopefully have something available to our Nito members soon. I've taken a note for myself. Some examples of lead magnets. We've touched on this a little, but I think we can get more specific. And Matt, I think you've used all of these, correct?
The only thing that we have not used yet is the webinars. So that's something that is kind of in process. But I'm super excited about doing that, because I think that having a 10-minute webinar, or for lack of a better word, an explainer video where somebody's talking into the camera, and really, having that kind of eye contact with the person that's watching, and really making a personal connection, I think that can be really effective. So we haven't done that webinar yet, but we have used the tuition rates, the white papers, and the quizzes.
So I'd actually like to show an example of that. So here we have Bergamo's. This is what we call a CTA, which is an acronym that means call to action. And this is the call to action for the tuition information. And I think it hits all of the bullet points we just spoke about. It's very specific. We offer one thing. They know exactly what they're going to get. And then what's brilliant about it is when they opt in, we segment. And this gives us the ability to speak to them with greater degrees of specificity than we would if we just asked for an email address and sent them our tuition rates. And this information drops into Matt's CRM. And then, Matt, how often do you find yourself using this segmentation? How important is this for the remainder of the process?
Oh, it's really important. Obviously, I'm going to send people different information over time if they are interested in our infant program versus our elementary program. Different information, the school locations doesn't necessarily change in terms of the information that we're sending them, but it's very important for when we have things like open houses, right? So I'll know what region they're in for us, so I can make sure that they're getting an invitation to a specific open house. That's really important as well. So I segment in those ways.
And then one of the things that you had us do early on was remove the phone number field, which some of our schools are actually collecting a phone number here. Do you recommend people following up on these tuition request forms?
Not in person. I think that, again, we're trying to make this as light touch as possible, right? We don't want to. I think we're going to talk about the information to collect on a future slide here, so I don't necessarily know if I want to get into that at this point, but I may have to. That we want to make it as easy as possible for people to basically sign up for this list, and the more information that you request, the more barriers there are to them to complete the form. And sometimes people will go to a form, and I've seen this with other schools, Montessori schools and other private schools. They'll have a request information page. They'll have a contact us page, and they ask for, there's like 15 questions. and just me, as somebody that's not even filling out that form, is overwhelmed with this. And all that does is it basically prevents people from signing up. So what are the bare minimum pieces of information that we need in order to follow up with them? I don't even need a last name. I just need a first name and an email address. And from there, as they continue to engage with us, when they sign up for the tour, of course, we're going to get all their specific information. But at this point, all I'm going to be doing is sending them emails. So I really don't need anything else except for their first name and their email address.
I'm going to put my marketing nerd hat on briefly. There was a study done that I thought was amazingly brilliant. And they looked at pages that have form fields on the page. And what they found was people tend to psychologically pre-qualify a website page as either an ask or a give. You're either giving me something or you're asking me for something. And the way they do that, it's one piece of criteria, and it's, do you have a field that you want me to fill in? And if they identify it as an ask page, then they're less likely to consume the content, more likely to bounce. The walls go up, so to speak. So one of the things that I think you've done here that's brilliant is you'll notice all of the calls to actions are buttons. So we're not asking them for anything yet, even though we're making the same offers you would make if this were a form. But when they click on the buttons, then the ask comes into play.
Yeah, and that's a really great point. Um, I can't say that I read the study and made that choice before that, but I like the fact that it's corroborating my choice on that.
Yeah, it's very clean. And one of the things we just saw actually is another example of a lead magnet. As my cursor started to head towards the menu bar, this call to action popped up, which is a quiz that Matt wrote um, for parents that are potentially leaving the site. Matt, can you talk about your decision to use exit intent?
Yeah, so exit intent, again, it's been something that's been really effective for us. We don't use any other pop-ups on the site. I'm still thinking about that. I think pop-ups can be a little bit intrusive, but I think they can be effective. This pops up when somebody is on our site and they go to basically the menu bar to go to another web page or to close the browser. And all this is saying is, hey, take our quick quiz to find out if Montessori is right for your child. So this is an effective headline. It's something that we used as our ebook, but instead of putting this as an ebook, I'm going to give them, again, something specific. I'm going to give them an answer whether Montessori is right for their child or not, based upon these 10 questions that we're going to ask.
And Matt has been kind enough to allow us to share this with the Nito member base. So if you're a second plane member and up, we actually have a quiz created in a tool that we use called Riddle. And reach out to us and we can embed this quiz on your site and add the lead magnet to your website directly.
It's important to note with that quiz, I mean, those are very general questions and there's no guarantee, right, that Montessori is right for your child, and even the language. So basically at the end of that quiz, they go through all of those questions, and there are general questions about Montessori. I think you saw the first one. Qasim, I don't know if you can pull that up again to go through the different quizzes. I think that, again, I may be jumping ahead. I think that was something that may be on a future slide.
There's 10 questions in total, and I'm going to select them at random.
Okay.
And what's nice is it's gamified, and we also have a progress marker so people know, they're not going to be here forever. And the other thing that I really like about this is the answer can be no. I mean, it's not a bait and switch where Montessori is right for every potential family. You actually give them, I think, a very honest piece of feedback.
Yeah. So after they've completed this quiz, again, boy, that's interesting. We should probably take our last name off of that. So that's something I just noticed. So they enter their name and their email address, and then what is emailed to them is the results of the quiz. And the two options for results are, yes, Montessori is a great option for your child based upon what you believe about child development education. And the other one is Montessori may not be, again, we're not saying no, but we're saying it may not be the best option for your child. You should consider, reading these articles. Here's some more detail about Montessori, so you can basically learn more. And again, that helps them select out, right? Because if they're looking for an early childhood program that has a lot of worksheets, that has a standardized curriculum, that is teacher driven, we are not the best option for them. And some people are looking for that. And unfortunately, with the number of Mana something schools out there, there's a lot of Mana something schools that provide those types of things. And so it's very confusing for parents. So we need to be as clear as possible with our results about this may not be right. Here's some more information about what authentic Montessori practice looks like, and here's what happens in our school. Then you make the decision if you'd like to continue on this journey with us.
Are there any other examples of lead magnets that you wanted to touch on specifically, Matt?
Yeah, I was brainstorming with Cossum earlier this week, and I thought of another great lead magnet um, that I definitely want to develop, and that is, are there openings at your school? So think about this. So again, one of the common questions that parents ask when they're inquiring is, do you have openings? There's a narrative out there that exists, and a lot of parents are anxious about it. Like if you don't apply to a preschool within 2 years of wanting to start, you're not going to get a space. And perhaps that's true in very, very competitive markets like Manhattan, for instance. That's not going to be true for most of us, right? We need to work really hard to build waiting lists of mission appropriate families. But by having a lead magnet, that's a button that somebody could click where they could say, check to see if there's openings, and they could get an email back with again, not a specific statement of the openings that you have, but kind of a general time frame. Like for instance, for us right now, for our infant and toddler programs, our waiting list is over a year. And so what I would do with that is I would respond with, we don't have any current openings. We are accepting children on our wait list for a general time frame of this. Let's schedule a tour to get you on that wait list. Or, we could have openings that come available if we have a withdrawal. So let's start that process versus, if it's September and we still have a couple openings left in primary, which I'm sure, most schools will probably have, that would be something that you could put, again, when it's segmented, when they choose the program that they're interested in, you can reply with a specific email about the number of openings, not the number, but about the general state of your wait lists. So I think that's going to be really effective for us too, because again, it answers a question that people have when they're on your site.
Matt, where do you place your lead magnets? Where have you seen that it's been most effective?
Um, So we have the tuition is basically it's on the front of our page. It's right beneath the scroll. So you want to place them as prominently as possible for macro items like that. So that would be tuition requests. That would be, again, if we do I'm not sure if I would put the openings on the homepage. Probably not. But I would definitely do the tuition because it's usually one of the first questions that people have. Um, from there, you could put that on each program page. So for infant, for toddler, for primary, for elementary, you could put a button that says check for openings on each specific page. I think that would be very effective as well.
And honestly, you can place lead magnets. I don't want to say you can hide them throughout your site because that's the wrong way to look at it, but you can sort of embed them within the content. So as people are engaging with, a blog, if you have a lead magnet that's applicable to that blog, you can link to it directly from the text. It doesn't need to be, a clear call out or its own button. It can be very subtle and meant only for folks that are hyper engaged with that specific narrative.
No, absolutely, and that's something that I'd like to. That's something that I'd like to actually develop a little bit more on our site. Is in all of our blog posts. I mean, there should be something. Um, there should be a link to some type of lead magnet, and as Cossum said, it can be just a link that's in the text. So that text becomes blue. People know that a blue link means that something's going to happen when you click it, and when they click that, it gives them the option to sign up. Same thing for things like videos. I know we all have. Well, I shouldn't say we all have. If you don't have a YouTube account, you should have a YouTube account for any videos that you put out. Putting a link to a lead magnet in the description, I think, would be another effective way of doing it. Basically, any piece of content that you put out, you should ask yourself, how could parents engage with us based upon what they are watching or reading? What is the next step for them? And from there, you choose the right lead magnet, and then you insert the link.
I just wanted to explain a few of these specifically within the content we just went through. When we reference a hero image, your hero image is the banner, the main banner to your site. And we actually prefer hero images to scrolling banners because there's what's called banner blindness. And this just means that when people see scrolling banners now on websites, they tend to ignore them entirely and they just start scrolling down, where a hero image can, stop them and get them to sort of pay attention. And either of these two calls to actions could be changed to a lead magnet. Um, but this would be the hero banner placement for a potential lead magnet. And then the floating CTA, the floating call to action, that's this little bar you see in the bottom right hand corner. It doesn't need to float in the bottom right hand corner. You've seen them float everywhere along the sides. In some cases, I've actually seen header banners, like you see my WordPress banner here. Um, so floating CTAs, I think, are really powerful because they just maintain sort of a consistent
Mhm.
presence that people are aware of. And Matt, you have a schedule a tour floating CTA.
I do, yeah, and that's from Calendly, so that hovers on the bottom right hand side of all, if almost all of our pages. So again, it's really, so you have a certain amount of visual real estate, um, and think about your most important call to actions. For us, it's schedule a tour. That's why it's going to be on most pages. But again, really think about each different page of your site, and there's going to be, it's a different type of parent that's going to be reading about your elementary page versus your toddler page, and what lead magnet would work best for that page.
And you can place calls to action directly in your menu, which is something people aren't acclimated to, but I think can be really powerful. If you have a very strong lead magnet and you think it's applicable to most of your visitors, then the same way we have schedule a tour here,
Mhm.
you could have a call to action to your lead magnet.
Absolutely, I think it's a great idea.
At the end of a blog or video we discussed, Matt, this is your idea in your email signature. This is something I had never considered until you brought it up. Is this something you've done so far?
So I have, our admissions director does have, it's not a lead magnet, but she has an opportunity in all of her, in her email footer to schedule a 15-minute phone call, right? Because a lot of people want, when they're emailing back and forth, they want to schedule a time to talk to her on the phone. So they can do that from her email signature. But this is something that I'd like to consider, quite honestly, even for our guides, right? What a great idea for somebody, for your elementary guide, when she's emailing parents back and forth, if there was something in her email signatures that said, watch a video about Montessori Elementary here, because there's going to be some parents that haven't watched that yet. There's going to be some parents that need, this is more about retention, but there's going to be some parents that would really benefit from that. And it doesn't cost you anything. A signature is permanent. It's going to be on every single email that's sent. Think about it, even like when you're working with vendors. Like if the head of school has something in his or her email signature which is about, learn more about Montessori here, what a great opportunity for them to engage more with your school and learn about what you offer, because again, that's how word of mouth starts spreading. So it's free, it's simple, you set it up once, and every single piece of communication that you're sending out in your email is going to have that link to it.
I think that's a great idea. I might borrow that from you, Matt, for my agency.
Feel free.
Okay, some best practices for lead magnets because it's a little daunting as a process. Um, Matt, you already talked about simplifying the form, and
Yes.
there's it's a double-edged sword here because you want enough information to be able to provide relevant value, but you don't want to scare them away with this big nasty form.
Yeah, again, lead magnets at the beginning, all we're doing is first name and email. When they schedule the tour, so that's not necessarily a lead magnet, but it's definitely moving them down the funnel. That's when we're collecting more information, specific information from them. And then when they actually come in from the tour, when they're in front of us, we have a very analog process. Actually have a paper form that they fill out, which gives us much more information. So by that point, we actually have a relationship because we're meeting in person, and then it's appropriate to get some more specific information about them and their child.
And when we say aim for segmentation, what I think is interesting about this is even if you're only asking for name and email and you're not asking for any additional information, the fact that they requested the lead magnet is a form of segmentation because you know what they're interested in and you can segment your list according to lead magnet requests, and that can assist in further conversations.
Correct. Like if they were looking, if they, wanted to see a video about the day in the life of your assistance to infancy classroom, we would know that they were interested in infants. So they don't even have to mark the box that they're interested in infant or toddler. We would be able to automatically apply them because that's the lead magnet that they chose.
Absolutely. I think your quiz is another great example. If somebody takes a quiz that asks, "Is Montessori right for your child?" For me, that means that they might not be quite as connected to the narrative, and we might need to deliver more Montessori specific content before diving into your school um, generally.
Absolutely.
One really important thing with lead magnets is delivering value immediately. I've seen in the past where people tend to treat lead magnets as a manual delivery, which I think is a mistake. If somebody fills out your form, they need to instantly receive the promised asset. Anything less than that kind of goes against the instant gratification state and nature that the internet has promised everybody.
No, yeah, and if do not consider doing this one off, where you have to actually respond to it. You'll be overwhelmed by it. You won't be able to satisfy people. You're not going to be up at 2 in the morning when people are requesting these things. So at least I hope you're not. So please, automation is your friend here, and it makes your life so much easier. You'll be notified when these things happen. I receive an email when somebody fills out a tuition request form, but I don't have to do anything else. It helps me. It's actually one of the best parts of my day when I get those emails where I see, great, we had 18 tuition request forms today. I know that 18 people engaged with us, but I didn't have to physically do anything to fulfill that.
And on that note, Matt, if you're a second play member above, we have a course specifically on lead magnet delivery. And the best part about it is it uses a tool called MailChimp, which is absolutely free. It's 100% free for under 2,000 subscribers. And so the technical setup is very easy. We walk you through step by step. There's nothing stopping you from building this out. It should take about an hour. And like Matt said, once it's built, it's there forever. It's evergreen, and you don't have to do anything else. We want to remind them why they made the request. Sometimes you fill out a form on a website and you forget you did it and you move on and you go throughout your day. And if a parent's doing research on multiple alternatives, they might return to their inbox and not really remember who you are, what they requested, what it is, etc. So, Matt, how do you kind of jump that hurdle? What are some of the things that you say in your email delivery?
Well, again, you just want to be very, very obvious. You cannot be too obvious when you're doing these things. You want to remind them who you are. You want to remind them the name of your school. You want to remind them what they requested. Um, you know, I like to use the phrase "as promised." I'm delivering what you requested. So it's again very, very clear about who you are and what you do and why they requested it. So again, like Qasim said, sometimes people will go and they're looking at 4 or 5 different schools. They could confuse you, especially if there's multiple Montessori schools, right? You want to be very clear with the name of your school, your address, your phone number, all that contact information is in there, and then making sure that it's coming from a specific person with a specific email address, I think is really key as well. So all of this comes from our admissions director, from her email. It looks as if it's being sent from her individually. And then there's a way for them to follow up if they have any other questions. It's not sometimes I've seen some emails go out from schools that it's a very generic email address, like, info@mymontessorischool.com. You want to make sure it's coming from a person. So it doesn't feel automated. It feels like it's actually coming from that individual.
I think that's a great point. What I've seen is, oftentimes people will respond to those emails not realizing that they're automated. Um, and that helps you start sort of a one-on-one conversation right away, which is really powerful.
Absolutely.
A few kind of subtle notes: over deliver where possible. I think all this means is make sure that you're not just doing the bare minimum. Um, for instance, when they request the tuition document, maybe there's also a link that provides additional information on, um, you know, other topics they may be interested based off of their segments. Matt, do you have any examples on where and how we can over deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, links are your friends here. So when you're sending them the tuition request, you can include links to your program page in there. You can include links to about your school. You could include links to a variety of things. So it's not just the tuition that we're sending them. We're saying, here's the tuition that you requested, and here's some other information that you may be interested in. Again, providing them context so that they can continue to engage with you.
And then what does it mean to include a next step? What would the next step be for somebody that downloaded one of your lead magnets?
So for us, the next step that we always want them to take is to schedule a tour. So that link is always included in there. And again, just be very, very clear about what that is. We can't assume that that they know what the next step is, right? Because again, different schools have different admissions processes. Um, so you should be very clear about what it is you want them to do. And again, for us, that is scheduling a tour. So we're going to invite them in just about, quite honestly, every email that we send. Even in the email series, there's going to be a link to schedule a tour because that's what the action that we want them to take.
And Matt, what is an email nurture? Why do we need to nurture our prospects?
Well, especially in Montessori, we need to guide them along this path to make this decision. And we don't just accept any family. It takes a lot of work um, for them to determine and for us to determine if this is a good match. And we're in a disadvantage in that way when you're just looking at in terms of raw numbers versus other preschools, other early childhood programs, because they'll just take anybody, just about anybody that wants to come in, and we have a higher filter for that because of the specific nature of what Montessori offers. So nurturing them is basically giving them a series over time of emails that help them make that decision. So there's different levels of psychology in terms of how often you send things. I've played around with do we send things once a day? Do we send things once every 3 days? I'm still measuring and testing that. So I don't have a specific answer for that. But what you're going to do is you're going to determine how many emails you're going to send, and then you're going to set that to nurture them on a specific time frame um, through email.
And for all of our members, we have in our resources section a templated email nurture campaign that Matt, I believe you wrote. And if you're not using that's available to you, and I think an excellent resource. So please take advantage of it. A case study from Bergamo. We went through quite a few of these, Matt. Anything you want to touch upon here?
Um, I mean, the only other thing that I would say, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, I think we jumped forward with the case study part of it. I talked about these when we were in the earlier part of this presentation. I mean, your newsletter opt-in is a lead magnet as well, and I still do get those. I still get people signing up for a newsletter, and it's probably the least effective lead magnet, but it is still a lead magnet, and it works. So I don't think you can have too many lead magnets, really. I mean, if you do, please tell me. And I think that you can really start to measure the effectiveness rather than limiting the number of e-magnets you have. Excuse me, the of lead magnets you have. I would really add or remove lead magnets based upon their effectiveness. So if you're noticing that certain things aren't working, you should remove those and try something else.
Some of the tools that we use for lead magnet delivery, MailChimp is we refer to often, mostly because it's free, to be frank, and it's really powerful. So if you're struggling with how to get started, I think MailChimp is a good first step. If you're looking for something a little more advanced, and Matt, I believe this is what you use, Entreport is a good tool um, and
It
includes
is.
quite a bit more in the way of features. What else do you use within the Entreport application?
So Entreport's nice in the sense that it's a CRM, which is a customer relationship manager, and it's also does all of our automation for the emails. So uh, Sylvia, who's our admissions director, keeps all of the notes um, on the families in Entreport. So this will happen as well, right? Somebody will inquire, and then we won't talk to them for 6 months, and then they'll contact us again. And it's great to be able to jump right back into where we left off because we have notes on them. So that is Entreport for us is a great combination of a CRM and an automation platform. Mailchimp does not. Mailchimp is just email, so it doesn't have the ability to keep those notes on each individual um, family as they're in that funnel. So, and I found Entreport to be very, very easy to use. I know that a lot of These automation platforms can be a little bit overwhelming. And what I love about Entreport is that it's um, the ease of use, especially for non-technical people, is really fantastic.
You can also use, if you have a subscription to Lead Pages, Lead Pages has a lead magnet delivery system. It doesn't allow for email delivery follow up. So you can send one email with a lead magnet, but you'd have to integrate with another tool. But um, I bring it up because it's something that we've used both for Bergamo and then just myself. And then WordPress, if you have a WordPress site, and I know a lot of Montessori schools do, WordPress has some basic lead magnet delivery tools, forms that will follow up with an email from the server. I don't recommend doing that. I don't recommend sending emails directly from your website because you risk um, getting your IP address blacklisted. If somebody accidentally marks your email as spam, that can be problematic for your website. But it's a tool available, I think, as a starter if you didn't have anything else.
Yeah,
Um,
quite honestly, for most schools, I would recommend starting with Mailchimp. Um, for most schools that are just starting out, I think that we're not ready to work on a larger platform like Entreport. Mailchimp is free. Mailchimp is easy to use, and there's you can't beat free and easy. So that's what I would recommend you start with.
you cannot beat free and easy. That is true. Um, Any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat pane or comment on Facebook Live. And while we're waiting for those questions to come in, the topic for next week is the Google Suite on your website. So we're continuing with the Ideal Montessori website. And next week, we're going to talk about integrating Google Maps, why you do that and how you do that. And we'll also talk about Google Calendar and having a public calendar on your website. Matt, you do both of those things. Can you tell me how and why?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you why. Why? Because it's easy. Most people, your parents, are on the Google network probably, and it's the most cost-effective solution for us. We use Google Suite for all of our processes internally, so that's all of our staff email, which includes calendar. Um, all that stuff. So it was a no brainer for us to be able to use that and roll that out. By the way, if you're not using Google Suite for your staff email, you should, because it's you get the most storage, and it's a very, very cost effective and reliable and stable platform for staff emails. And so with that, it was really easy for us to be able to use both of these tools on our website as well.
And that will be the coaching call next week. It's every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. Same link, needlemarketing.com/coaching. And look forward to seeing everybody there. I don't see any questions coming in, so I think we are clear to sign off. Matt, thanks so much for being here as always, sir.
No problem. Look forward to talking to everybody next week.
Yeah, thanks to all our members, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye bye.